All right, so this is Computer Science 305. This is the last part of the Ruby 2 lecture series. And so we're just going to cover one quick thing on I/O and how we can actually read and write files. So this is IO 01.rb. And so we've kind of mentioned reading and writing files really quickly. It's pretty simplistic. So let's so we'll just kind of get in and work with them really quickly. All right. So let's create a new file. We'll call it test file, just because. And let's see what we want to say. So in here we'll say this is line 1, this is line 2, this is line 3, and so on. Alright, so we have that built now. We can go ahead and start messing with it and actually gain some sort of semblance of how I/O works. So there are a lot of different I/O classes. You can use file or I/O to do most everything inside Ruby. So if we want to open a file, we say file.open and test file. So what that does is it gives us the actual file itself, a pointer to the file in memory, which we call file. And so what this is saying is we've opened it, and then if we do it in using a block with the do end block, that'll give us the ability to not have to close the file. It will automatically close for us. So we can then modify it by saying line equals file.gets, just like we could with gets from the standard in. We can do it with file, so it will read each individual line. So we say puts line, end the while, and that file IO block. And what happens is if we run this, we will see each line from the file on the standard out. So let's do that. Ruby io01.rb, and as we expected, it printed out each line from the file. So we could actually do this and gain some knowledge from the file if we need to. So the next thing we could do is there are other iterators. We saw earlier the file.forEach. We could also use io.forEach, right, on test file. We pass it a block, and then this will handles what we just did, except for in a single line, right? Do the exact same thing, and it does literally the exact same thing. We can also we can do that same approach as before, io.forEach test file. And if we had more than what one line could handle, we could use a do end block. So we can say do line puts line end, right? Same thing as we've been doing the last 3 statements. These are all equivalent. So now sometimes we might want to actually write to a file. So when we call file.open, as we did before, we call this test file 2. You can give it a second parameter, which can be W or R or RW, depending on if you want to write, read, or write. In this case, we want to write, so we'll use W. Note that it defaults to R, I believe. So we open the file, and so we say file.puts. This is a test, right? Say end. We go ahead and run this. And we note that test file 2 was created, and it creates this and it says this is a test inside of it. So that's how we can write to a file. We can also similarly write to a file using what we will call the C++ style. So the C++ style is something that looks like this. Let's create an end line character, right? And so standard out is the reference to the actual standard out, the console. So we can use the left shift operator to shift data onto it. So if we did this, it should say 99 red balloons on the standard out, which it does. Now I believe if we open up our file.open and we say file equals file.open, and we'll call this test file 3. We'll open it for writing. So what this does is it gives us a pointer file, and then we can say file red balloons, just like we did before. And then we call file.close, because we don't have anything that automatically closes it for us. Close. What we should be able to do is we should be able to see the exact same thing as we did on the standard out, but now inside of a file. We take a look, and we see 99 red balloons. Alright, and apparently I spelled balloons incorrectly. But doesn't really matter if I can or cannot spell in this instance. So finally, we can also do stuff with string IO, right? So oftentimes, even in Java, I find it that I need to manipulate string using more IO style operations. And so in order to do this in Ruby, we can require the string IO library. And this is just like working with a file, except we're working with a string now. So we can just create a new one we'll call string.io.new, and we can construct it by with the new operator. And now is the time to learn Ruby. All right, good enough. OP we'll say is, so input was what we just created. So now we create a new string IO for output. We call this new, and empty with W for writing. So we then can, just like we did before, this time we can say for each line. So each line in the string, we say do line, and then we're going to put to the output string. So we say op.puts line.reverse. And then we say end, right? And then if we want to actually get that the value of that output string, we can say puts, and then we call the string method on it, right? So that gives us the actual string value. So if we try this one more time, we are printing out, it captures the /n, right? So we didn't chomp that, but regardless, it does give us the values that we want to see. So, yay, that's been finished. Okay. So those are the basic IO operations. We can open a file with file.open. We close the file with file.close. If we use file.open with a block, we don't have to close it. That's pretty much the gist of IO in Ruby. You know, very basic stuff. Anyway, so that's the end of the Ruby 2 lectures. Ruby 3 will cover more some more advanced concepts involving just some more a couple of more advanced examples, as well as I may or may not look at exceptions. So anyway, I look forward to talking to you all then. All right.